Okay, so the question that we're going to tackle is this. And a lot of people ask this question. Does the theory of evolution disprove the biblical account of creation? Because a lot of people, think there's a versus kind of thing. It's you either believe one or the other, but you can't have both.
Yes.
And I guess the quick answer to that, and we'll get into more of this.
Count to three, and then we'll all give the answer?
Yes, 1, 2, 3.
No.
The answer is no. So it doesn't disprove it. But let's talk about why, because a lot of people don't quite understand.
Nor does the reverse is true. Nor does the biblical account of creation disprove evolution.
Exactly.
Neither one is trying to go at the other.
They aren't trying to deal with the same question.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think I'll just say that as somebody who has helped, who has worked in youth ministry primarily, and a big part of I saw my job was once they left youth ministry, being actively involved with college students and people of that. This is one of the number one, what I would call ideological reasons people actually, once again, I'll say people who go to college, this is one of the biggest things that actually makes them turn a little bit from their faith. This, and I'd say maybe what's referred to as like the problem of evil, are the two big things. If you say ideological, there's lots of other reasons that people tend to walk away.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to ideas that conflict in their head, and I think it's because the way it's posited by many Christians and by many people in the science field is that these two things are at odds. That if you're going to believe a scientific account of the creation of the universe, including things like evolution and things of that nature, then you can't believe the Bible because the Bible says that didn't happen. And people who are on the Christian side go, well, you can't believe that theory of how the world came about because the Bible said it didn't happen. The Bible didn't say it didn't happen, and that's not even the point of the verses that people are looking at when they talk. And I also think it's important to say when people talk about the biblical account of creation, there's not just one.
That's right. I always ask people, which one are you talking about?
Yes, there are multiple. There are obviously the Genesis account, but even in Genesis, there are two in the first two chapters.
It goes back over it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a little different.
Yeah, there's some in Psalms, there's one in Job, there's one, and it's just several times it's brought up. Every time, I'll say this and then we can go, every time it is in what's referred to as poetic form, it's written from the point of very figurative language. It's painting a picture of something, not necessarily a play-by-play scientific description. Doesn't mean that you can't take it as a play-by-play scientific description. The only point is that was not what it was intended to be read as.
And if you do, you do run into some problems. And let's just be honest. I mean, and we were having this discussion as we were setting this up. The truth is, and I hear a lot of Christians, they want to stand on, I take the Bible literally. And they mean, word for word, kind of the description you just said. And I've had this discussion with people. I just believe what Genesis tells me. And I get why they're saying that, but the truth is you don't, because there are always parts of it that even the people that say they take it literally don't take literally. They're still, so my point when I talk to those people is, you already take some of this figuratively.
That's right.
There are just others that take other parts figuratively, and so you've picked and choose what you're taking figuratively, and so at least be intellectually honest. You know what I'm saying? You can be a follower of Jesus and be what you would call the young earth creationists who believe, in the 7-day, 24-hour cycles, or what they call an old earth creationist, which they take, of course, that word day, there's some debate on how you can interpret that.
That's right.
That word. And
that's how people get it. I'm either a young earth creationist, which means I believe the whole earth's less than 10,000 years old, or I'm an old earth creationist. They're lengthening days at a certain point.
Exactly.
To try to take some scientific evidence that they want to take and put in. It all comes down to they're answering different questions.
Yes.
Science is not trying to answer who, because when it comes down to it, everything goes back to a point, and everybody admits it all started at a point.
Right.
That's the best
and science has proven that.
That's right. Right now, that's the best science. And again, there may come something beyond that, because at every point, science is always trying to disprove itself.
Science,
it's
by
always-
its nature, is evolving on that sense.
That's
but
right.
It is
It's constantly
learning.
looking at everything and saying, is there something beyond that? But right now, they see a singular point that everything started. Well, Christianity says the same thing.
Well, and isn't it interesting that at one point in recent history, in the last 100 years, that idea that many people now get to, and I'll say many Christians are afraid of the term of like Big Bang, that there was an initial event that created the universe, that it originally was actually helpful to believers.
Right, yes.
Because it used to be believed in what was referred to as like a static universe, that the universe has just always been.
Right,
That's
that's
what
right.
many scientists believe. And what I'll say is many non-faith-based side. Many people who at that time were saying one of the proofs that there is no biblical account of creation is the universe wasn't created. It's
That's
just
right.
always been.
And then when they found that and the Big Bang
Well, and they had
theory,
this idea that the universe is expanding, so that therefore it had a start place. They understood, and the term that came out of that was, if there's a Big Bang, there's a Big Banger. That there's
to be.
somebody who initiated. But now what has happened, what I find funny is I'll regularly talk with Christians who are what I would say very young Earth creationists that will say, and they use the Big Bang as there is no Big Bang, and I want to say to them, no, the Big Bang helps our biblical
It does.
account of creation. And so I think all of that confusion, and the reason I bring that up, it's not just a little nuanced point. To me, it shows that it's gone beyond people who have lost the narrative of what we're talking about. It shows we have, in many ways, just turned this into turf wars over, because the Big Bang now, I know many Christians and many people, scientists go, well, you don't believe in the Big Bang. And I go, no, we do, because the nature of that says
we've been saying that for the whole time.
Well, the Christians have always said that the universe was created out of nothing. And
Right.
just as you just mentioned, Nathan, just in the last 100 years or so,
Yes.
science has said the universe was created out of nothing.
That's right.
So now where we're at, we're all in agreement on that. It's just what was behind that. A lot of atheists and people who are kind of not warmed up to the idea of God yet would say, well, we just haven't figured out how something comes from nothing.
Yes,
we
what
believe
was
that
the
it
energy
does.
behind that?
That's right. We believe that nothing can create something, which currently, no, we don't know that. We just have to, and as you and I said, that's a faith statement right there.
Yeah.
But Christians all along have said, well, no, there was nothing but God, because God's eternal. God made something out of nothing. And so now anybody who tells you, well, nothing can create something, they're just not just making it up. They're making an assumption.
Well, again, we both tend to creep over into each other's territory, and I have done that in
Yes.
my 40-something years now of being a Christian. I have been at several of these positions along the line, and until finally, as a person who likes to read and study, I began to study and read this stuff in science, and I go, okay, that has everybody who really has looked at it says this is true.
right.
So now I just look at it and go, oh, they're talking about how this happened. The Bible's only talking about who made it happen.
Yes.
The Bible was
Right.
never trying to answer how, it was answering who. And so I know one of the verses you're going to talk about that a lot of Christians miss out on is that in the New Testament, a lot of people talk, well, God created, God's the creator. Well, the New Testament makes clear Jesus
Right.
is the name of the God who was the creator, which is a problem a lot of Christians don't even realize. That's where you're going to get to this, that Jesus is the author of this. John makes that clear. Paul makes that clear. So they're just even refining who between Old and New Testament
Right.
clearer, but it's still, they're working on the same question of who. So now anytime there's a new scientific discovery, I just go, oh, that's how he did it.
Yeah.
But when a scientist gets back all the way to what they know and they say, okay, this is where we know, and then they begin to say, but there can't be a who, let's just be clear, they have stepped over, like we have stepped into their realm often and said, this is how he did it. They have now stepped into the philosophical end
Right.
and said, there isn't a who. Who is not a scientific answer.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, and I think that's important, and I know there are a lot of great Christian scientists who are working on this. Well, I should say scientists who are Christian, because anyway, there are a lot of scientists who are Christian, like Francis Collins,
Yes.
who we watched a interview with of about a month or so ago, who's the head of the National Institute of Health and worked on the Human Genome Project and all this different kinds of stuff.
And he's on a part of the BioLogos Foundation
Yeah,
as
he
well.
created that.
He created
Created that,
Biologos.
which I was going
over
to say.
this specific question.
Yes, And which I was going to say, if you want articles to read about this,
Yeah.
that's where you go. Just look up Biologos and their website.
And for those of you who are still trying to figure this out and you aren't sure about God and the who question, you should know that Francis Collins was on your side
Right.
as he mapped the human genome. And I mean, I don't know, you may be right there with him scientifically. I am not. He has much more discipline in that area and study than I have. And it was in studying that area that he came to believe there is a who, there is an intelligence behind this. And it's no longer, it's not even intellectually sound for me to say there is no who.
And I think it's important. I think this question is important. That's one thing I end up talking with people about, not just to build up your own faith. I'm not by my nature. I love things we refer to as apologetics, which is just defensive faith, and so answering kind of questions around those things. By my nature, that's not the number one thing that's interesting to me. I don't think this is just an issue of, well, can I even believe in the Bible? I think there is a at its core a story. And I'm going to be talking about this on Sunday. This is central to my sermon on Sunday. But the stories that we end up telling ourselves about the world, they form ourselves and they form what we think is possible. And I think one of the reasons many of us fail to follow everything Jesus commanded is because we are telling ourselves a story that what Jesus commands us to do is impossible for us to do, because we just have poorly formed imaginations. The way our imaginations work is there's a way this world operates, and the people who get ahead have to do certain things to get ahead. We answered a question before that says, isn't there coming a time where good people are going to have to do bad things? Well, that's a story you're telling yourself.
That's right.
You're telling yourself a story that everybody, if they're going to survive, is going to have to do certain kinds of things. And there are exceptions to times where I don't have to be loving or submissive or gentle or kind. And I don't have to do those things at that point because I need to do the bad thing to get. Well, all of that is a story you're telling yourself. And the same is true when it comes to how did the universe come to be? How did human beings come to be? What does God think about our planet? How does he think about our responsibility to care and to love for one another and for our planet and for the creatures on this planet? If the story you tell on either side does not include what is the true, what I would say is the essence behind the biblical account, which is that God created, and as you mentioned, which is true, Jesus is the creative force behind everything in existence. And when he created it, it was good. But also, it wasn't fully complete because he brought humans in to work alongside him and to do things. And so just because it was good didn't mean that it was done, and that he wants us to be active in caring for one another and caring for the planet.
We are a part of the overall plan, and we always were.
We always were, yes. And that when Jesus, and this is where we get to in the sermon Sunday, when Jesus dies and rises from the dead, he says, I'm bringing a new creation with me, that I'm recreating everything, but not like, as you just said, that was the plan from the beginning. I'm bringing people to do it, but he works through us. And so the story you tell yourself, it affects how you treat people, how you treat our planet, how you treat everything God's created.
Including yourself,
Absolutely.
I would say. I think one of the things that's become evident to me over time is how much lack of purpose people have when they don't tell themselves the right story, that I was created by God on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And that my purpose is determined by him, and he's told us what our purpose is. My purpose is to love people and to love God, and I have to, whatever job I have isn't my purpose.
Right.
Whatever thing I'm good at is not my purpose.
Yeah.
And when I don't tell myself that right story, that in the end, it does impact how I treat myself, how I treat you, how I look at God, how I look at the world. And the closer I can get to telling myself that right story, the more my life is going to be in harmony, and I won't be purposeless like a lot of people. I really just sense, and I talk to people, they don't know what they're trying to do.
Well, and the other part of it is it frees me from one, it gives me a purpose but it puts my purpose in context that I'm not the purpose. And that, because for most of us, I become the purpose. And for many people, that's where a lot of their anxiety comes from. A lot of their depression comes from, because if I'm the purpose and I'm supposed to be the best I can be, it don't take any of us very long to figure out I'm not the best I can be, and I have no plan to become the best. And there are people who are doing better than me. There are people who are succeeding. I feel like a failure. I feel like I'll never catch up because I'm the purpose. And one of the beauties of the biblical account of creation, every time it's repeated, is the reminder that I'm not the purpose of this. That when I was created, I enter into a story that's greater. I talked about last week, I have a prayer meeting every morning, and part of our prayer meeting every morning is I remind me and the people who do it that we begin by reminding ourselves our story is greater than ourselves, and we pray this thing where it's, Lord, let my soul rise to meet you as the day rises to meet the sun, just like it does every day. Whether I'm here or not, the day rises to meet the sun. Glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. This story came before me. It's going. I get to participate in. I have a purpose to participate right now, but it's going on after my time is done, and I get to join in the greater story for eternity. I think that is a beautiful thing. So when we talk about this question, I do think the question matters, but as Ed and Jason have both said too, the how is not as important as the who and the why.
Right. Wow. Who would have thought we'd have gotten into all that out of the evolution question?
There you go.
Well, and as Jason
stuff.
and I were talking about this earlier on a different subject, I always come down with people, what you decide on how, I don't know how you answer that question, how it impacts you loving God and loving people. So whether you're a young earth person or you're a theistic evolution person, wherever you are on the scale, I don't know how practically it impacts that. So make a decision, read, don't get locked in, because if you get too locked in, you will violate the only two commands that that Jesus said mattered.
Yep.
Loving God and loving people.
Yep.
Yep.
Keep your eye on the ball.